Hello and welcome to a bit of a special video. Today we're going to look at a video I'm going to respond to in this one. It is a video by Taras Kul about his bees, where he explains how he has lost 6 of his 7 hives. Let me get this straight. I am not laughing at him or anything, and I think it's quite sad that he has lost those hives. It's always sad if somebody has lost a lot of hives. But I had my reasons to just get into this video and look into a few things, and I would like to expand on a few things and maybe also point out some mistakes that he did not point out and that he doesn't seem to be aware of. So that being said, let's get right onto it. This here is Taras Kul. I'll put a link to the original video in the description below so you can look at it. I might even pin a comment with the link as well, so you don't even have to scroll to the description to find it. If you scroll past it, you can find it there. I don't know. Okay, so that being said, let's get on with it. I've marked a few timestamps, so it's actually a somewhat scripted response. I've marked a few timestamps, which I should probably have looked up before I did this. So this was one of them. He basically enters his hives here. And the first thing you can see is this insulation foil here, which is a strange thing to use in my opinion. Now, bees have been around since millions of years. Winter has been around for at least that long as well. And humans keep bees since, I think, about 3,000 years if you're being generous. So that's really generous. Maybe 4,000 if you consider the ancient Egyptians, which were known to have some form of beekeeping. It wasn't quite close to the modern beekeeping you have nowadays, but my point here is bees know the winter. They have gone through winters before humans kept them, and they will probably also go through winters after we are done with keeping them. So, and also there are studies that say bees can survive temperatures up to minus 60 degrees without too much of a problem. So I don't think this insulation is necessary, and in fact, since it actually removes the air circulation from that hive and it traps the moisture inside, you now get an anaerobic, oxygen-deprived, moist and dark environment with plenty of wood to munch on for a fungus. So yeah, it's getting moldy. It's you see the mildew there, and he points that out as well. So it's kind of pointless in my opinion. So you don't have to use that. Anyway,
Let me show you my mistakes. First of all, I think what I did wrong, I should not have left a third empty box right here.
that is in fact correct. This third box here is essentially a huge amount of dead space. Now, the bees will probably, or will generally sit on their food store, so they will be sitting on those frames, and as you all know, heat rises to the top, so the heat they would produce, the warm air they would produce, would rise to the top of the hive. So in order to get this food here warmed up, and the winter cluster will kind of have to warm their food up as they move through the hive. In order to warm this up, they first have to warm this entire volume of air, which is a huge waste of energy because this doesn't do anything for them. So yeah, this box was a mistake.
Just empty right here. And usually what I did, even bigger mistake, is feeding them in a winter sugar syrup.
Correct? This was just bad. Why would that be bad? You don't feed your bees in general in winter because they will usually have to process the food in some way. Whatever you do with sugar and water in varying degrees is not actually a substitute for honey. Especially the sugar syrup is more a substitute for nectar. So what you do with that is you simulate your bees that there is a nectar flow outside, and you tell your queen that if she wants to capitalize on that, and get as much of that in before it ends and before the winter comes, she has to get laying. So she has to get the colony up to strength. And that's one thing. And yeah, it's not yet honey. What do I mean by that? Honey, in order to be unable to ferment on its own, because there are always some yeasts around that can do it. In order to ferment, honey needs at least 20% water content. I think it was 20%. It might be a bit above that. It might be 22, 25. I'm not entirely sure on that, but it was around 20%. If it has less water than that, yeasts and mold and things like that cannot really exist in it. So it won't start fermenting on its own. If you make a sugar syrup, the most recipes I've found, basically, and the one I use as well, are 3 parts of sugar, 2 parts of water. So you use 3 kilograms of sugar and 2 liters of water, which means by weight you have about 40% water. A honey, when it's fully cured, has less than 18% water. Let's go with 20%. Just because it's easier to calculate. So as you can see, you have to go from 40% water to 20% water content. And you can't add more sugar, so you have to take water out. The bees will have to do this with syrup as well. They have to do it with nectar, and they have to do it with the syrup. How do they do that? They just suck it up, they carry it around, they expose it to air, they regurgitate it, they bring it in, they pass it between each other. And during that, it just gets dried out. They also let it dry in the air and in the comb, in the open cells. And they can't do that during the winter. So when you put such a syrup jar in your hive during the winter, you're basically letting it ferment, which might also be why those leaked out, by the way. Because as we all know, fermentation creates carbon dioxide and other gases potentially, which will build up in that jar, so it will fill up that vacuum, and that will cause it to spill. So, yeah, that's that. And fun fact, if you actually do that, if you feed your bees during the winter, and they have to drink or to use this fermenting food or to consume it, to lick it off themselves, they can actually get sick. And we'll see that in this shot here. It's about to come up. Here-ish.
Right on top of them and killed them. I guess.
Those dots here, and I think it was a bit earlier or a bit later. Those might actually be bee diarrhea. It's hard to tell from this shot. It might just be bits where branches started. It's also quite visible on those jars themselves. This might just be, the bees having consumed this fermenting stuff and getting sick from it. Okay. He keeps going on how he couldn't see diseases, but we'll get into that in just a moment. It's hard to tell. Those things here are against the small hive beetle. I know those are like the one indicated treatment for that. But it's not an entire treatment, it's just some way to keep it at least in check. It's very hard to get rid of those small hive beetles. We don't have them in Germany yet, and I'm quite happy with that. I hope it stays that way for a while. That being said, let's get on to the real kicker for me, and the main reason why I made this video and why I felt compelled to actually go out of my way and make a response video. My very first response video to anything on this very platform is this.
Look at that, all that full of pollen. I don't see any diseases or nothing. Look how clean that is.
Clean is not quite the word I would use for it. It is black and hideous. This is unhygienic. We'll get into why in just a moment. But yeah, this is not clean, and this might have to do with why this colony has died. And let's just keep going.
Oh man, what a big mistake I did. Do not feed your bees during the winter time. Another one right here, such a clean.
Again, this and the word clean should not be used together.
No diseases. I don't see anything. Full of syrup, full of honey. There you go, guys. Huge mistake.
Stop. He doesn't see any diseases. Might be because he's not looking. This here is what used to be a brood nest, and now it is what we know as a spotty brood nest. So usually the bee really puts a really solid pattern in there, and this is not quite the solid pattern. So that's one thing that should set off your alarm bells. Now the second is that it might just be the resolution here, but those look like holes in there, very little black holes, which is actually a sign of a potential sign of American foul brood. Another sign would be a dark residue at the bottom of the cell, which obviously if you're using this bloody black comb, this dirty black comb, you couldn't really see even if it was there or not. There are other ways that you can't just check from looking at it, but this should prompt him to check for AFB immediately. While we're on that topic, by the way, American foul brood is a bee disease that is very, very contagious, that is absolutely lethal to a colony if unchecked, and if not treated properly, and that will wipe out your entire bee colony, not just those 6 hives. It will actually wipe out all the bees in, or most of the colonies in a 3-kilometer radius. So you want to get this checked. While we're on this, let's talk about why you don't want to use your those black combs. And that's something I feel like going into some detail with, because it's something that many beekeepers don't seem to do, and especially many of the beekeepers I've seen on YouTube don't seem to do that for some reason. Now, why is it bad? When bees make beeswax, pure fresh beeswax is actually white. It then turns yellow as pollen is stored in it, as pollen is carried over it, because the oils in the pollen will seep into the wax and it will color it yellow. And this black color here comes from, it can come from dirt and dust, which is brought in from outside. It can also, and it is very often, a buildup of dirt inside the cells. And those are brood cells, so in here were once bee larvae. Those larvae will do 2 things in their lifespan. They will shed their skin a few times. They will also eat a whole lot, but that's beside the point here. Or not quite beside the point. And they will defecate exactly once before they pupate. And both those skins and the small pellet of feces will remain in the cell after the bee emerges. They don't remove those, they just plaster propolis and beeswax over it, and then they call it a day, then the cell is ready again. Now, over time this builds up, and it causes the cells to actually shrink in size, because there's just so much more stuff building up in them. So this leads to actually slightly smaller bees every time, which are of course physically weaker than regular sized bees, so they have to fly more often for the same amount of food, for the same amount of honey, and they will also be, because it's not exactly hygienic, they will also be more sickly, they will also be more vulnerable to disease, which can also build up in those combs. Now, in nature this would actually not be a problem, because you have wax moths, which will basically eat this black stuff. The wax moth larvae will eat the skins, they will go through the wax, they will eat it, and they will remove this wax. so the bees can actually draw fresh comb in the next year. This is actually not happened or not wanted in managed beehives anymore, because the beekeeper often has other ideas for what to do with the wax, and they do not involve having it eaten by other life forms. So yeah, two things here. Don't use that. Get rid of this black comb, and do check for AFB first. It's just something you have to know about. Okay, next one is over here.
These jars, they just leak through.
We've discussed the fermentation already. You can see here this might actually be bee diarrhea. I'm not too sure though. It might just be some other kind of dirt. It's hard to tell again from just looking at it here. However, I prefer the hive top feeders, but that's just me. I can show you some of those later this year if you want. Now, next one is a bit of a positive example. Let's stop it here. Now this is the color you want your comb to be in. This you could use again if it's not foul brood. This is actually okay. This is a relatively fresh comb. This can go right back in. And here's another real kicker for me. It starts around here. Come on.
In frames, I don't see any beetles or mice in them or moth. One good news, I'm glad it's my mistake and not the diseases, because now I can put it to use. If I put new bees in here, they don't have to draw out new comb. I'll save this one, and they're going to start off very, very fast. So I like that. And also I'm gonna be catching bees, and I will be able to use this to catch bees.
No. No, 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 no. You should not do that ever. First off, I've explained this already. Secondly, the previous colony has literally died on those frames. And you're going to use that right for the next one. No. If your dog or your cat or your whatever other animal died in its bedding material, or in its bedding, like in its nest, its favorite pillow or whatever, and you got a new one, you would not give him that pillow, bed, whatever, without cleaning it first. And that's the same here. Aside of, obviously, this stuff should go out. But yeah, you would not use that. Also, something else he notices later in the video, and do feel free to watch the entire thing, I'll put the link in the description below, is mice. He actually had mice in there. He actually shows the nest later on. And this is something I want to address right here, because we can see it here. Those landing boards are actually a very good platform for mice. They can just sit on here very comfortably, they don't have to stretch, they can just sit on there and chew their way into your hive at their leisure. And this is obviously not the best thing to have happen to your hive. If you have those boards, if you provide your mice with a very easy way into the hive, then get a mouse guard. You should invest in a metal mouse guard, because they can't chew through that. At least the mice I know can't. If they can, you probably have other problems. I have like landing boards that you can just remove, so I do that during the winter. You might want to put them on during the spring though, because bees in spring, when they return to their first foraging flights, will often be very heavily loaded with water, pollen, nectar for the colony, and they're not yet as agile as they will be in the summer, because it's still pretty cold, so they might need those boards to land on to rest for a moment and to get to walk the rest of the way, you know. That brings me to another thing. So you should not give your colony completely drawn out comb. I'm not sure if you would do that, but Many people seem to think it's nice if they spare their bees some work. Like if they leave them more honey so they don't have to make more. Okay, that's reasonable, but some people actually give them honey so they don't have to make all the to put all the effort in it to make all the honey, to collect it from all over the place, to cure it, to dry it out, to store it, to cap it. So okay, we still have to cap it, but or to draw out wax. And I want to quote something that the guy who gave the beekeeping classes in Dresden said last year during a presentation, and I found really interesting, is the bees want to do that. The bees actually have that urge to build. They have the urge to make honey. They have the urge to collect honey. They have to also collect nectar. They just want to do that. They want to work. So you don't actually do them a favor if you spare them that work, if you don't let them have that work. And as a friend of mine put it, very interestingly, not a beekeeper, but I'd like to quote that here. So unemployed bees will basically have time to go into politics, he said. And I found this hilarious because it's kind of what they do. If they're unemployed, they will actually cause, or they can actually, at least as current theory, they can trigger the swarming mood. So they will actually kind of trigger the production of a new queen cell. They will that will force the colony to swarm. They will split the hive, or the colony will split. One pod will swarm, one pod will stay, and have more work to go around. So that's just something I found interesting. I wanted to share that with you because it was quite a brilliant quote. Sadly not by me, but sometimes you just have to deal with it. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to say here. This is actually the third or fourth take of this video. If you want to discuss that with me in further detail, if you want to point out how wrong I was about certain things, by all means go ahead. You can either leave a comment or you can join the Discord. The link will be, of course, in the description below. There is actually a beekeeping subsection in which you can share your knowledge with me all the time. I'm always looking forward to discussion there. It's currently pretty unused because it's a relatively new server. Anyway, if you didn't like this video, then by all means go ahead. The dislike button is right there, and I think it works. You don't have to test it. I'm quite sure it works. You can also share this video if you want. You can. You should not spam Taras Kul with it, but if you want, you can at least share it there. I hope it won't get copyright struck. That would kind of suck. No, the rhyme was not intended. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much all. Now, one more thing I want to give you on the way here, and it's also something that I want to give everybody else on the way. And actually, no, one more thing that caused me to make this video was the comments under his video saying basically, yeah, it's sad that you lost your colonies, which of course it is, but at least other people can learn from your mistakes and can learn from what you're doing here. And while that is true to a degree, I don't think young beekeepers should be learning to use comb like this. We're currently having the fall breed in Dresden, and one of the big things that we keep being told by the various experts we have invited to teach us about this is don't keep comb in your hive any longer than 3 years. If it looks black like this, kick it out, melt it down, use it for something else. And yeah, this is it's just this right here, okay? When I see this, it really makes me angry because what's happening here is they're teaching bad beekeeping, and it's kind of one of my pet peeves of mine if people try to take charge of a life form, and that's what you do as a beekeeper. You take on the responsibility of caring for that bee colony, which is a life form itself. And if you do that, you should at least know how it works. That doesn't only include bees. it extends to everything, whether it's dogs, cats, bearded dragons, other lizards, snakes, spiders, ants, bees, whatever you want to keep. You should know what your key P, I guess, what it needs, how it functions, how you care for it. And it really bothers me that in this case, I've watched most of the other beekeeping videos, and it became quite apparent to me quite sometimes that even though he says he has a beekeeping guide, a beekeeping mentor, he doesn't seem to listen to that person. Um, and I think it's just sad because if you don't know how to keep bees, if you didn't bother learning how to care for a life form, you just shouldn't. Okay? That's something I tell all of the people who approach me about learning beekeeping is go take the lessons. If you can't muster the motivation to take those 6 half-day seminars, then you're probably better off collecting stones or doing something else that does not involve caring for a life form. I do not consider pet rocks as a life form. I know there are living rocks, but those are a different thing, okay? Um, or collect stamps, or just do something else, okay? Because I think it's always sad if a life form, if an animal gets into bad care. This to me looks like pretty bad care. So it's not a personal offense, but I just don't think this person is prepared to keep bees well, and that has to be said sometimes. You may hate me for that. I think I might have subscribed to the Crazy Russian Hackers channel at some point. I might have unsubbed at some point again. I don't know. But yeah, I've been following those videos because, as you know, I do enjoy beekeeping myself. And even though I don't really make any actual beekeeping videos and show myself on the hives, I do know a thing about it, and I'm planning to actually do that. So next year, if things turn out as planned, I will actually make more beekeeping videos. For now, we'll return to the regular schedule of Let's Plays and live streams of Let's Plays. Also partly because it's still bloody winter, so I probably won't be able to get to the hives or to open the hives up until, I guess, mid-February. So you'll have to wait at least for 2 more weeks, and I have to wait for that time as well, which really sucks because I don't know if my bees are still alive. We had some pretty warm weather lately, and many people told me that they have seen bees flying, but I didn't get to the garden yet, so I didn't get to see if my bees were among those. And also, you really don't know for sure until you actually open up the hive. Last year I had this when I was pretty sure they were dead. And I opened up the hive, and because I wanted to seal it up, mostly because you're not allowed to leave an unused bee home. That's actually how it's said in law, a bee home. I'm supposed to leave that out and open so other bees could get in, because they could contract whatever killed the original owners of that. And I decided I would go into that, I would open it up at least once and then see what killed the colony, if they starved, if it was disease, if it was the mite. And it was then I noticed that they were actually alive, much to my very pleasant surprise. So I was quite thrilled with that. I was glad I didn't seal up the hive. And the bees did okay for the rest of the year. I'm hoping they're still fine, but I'll only see it later on. I'm also still outside of the foul brood area. I hope that stays this way as well. I will keep you updated on any developments in that area, though. We actually had a meeting today about the foul brood, where the city invited all the beekeepers, and it was I wouldn't want to call it a massive waste of time, but in general, if you hear the words open discussion or open meeting, then those four words should probably be among the first that come into your mind to describe it. At least that's my personal feeling. It might have been productive, only time will tell, really. So with that kind of cliffhanger, I will leave you. I will resume the regular program later today because I recorded Darkest Dungeon and I totally forgot uploading it. That one's on me. There will be a video today, another video, a Darkest Dungeon video. It will be quite long as well. As people have requested long videos, I will oblige. I actually made this video which I expected to be like 10 minutes long. And now it's 30 minutes of me ranting, so I hope you enjoy that as well. I would have actually liked to put up a picture of my own beehive, my own, not just a hive, of my own comb there. Sadly, I noticed I didn't have any because it's kind of hard to take pictures while you hold the comb. Especially if it's very heavy, you want both hands on that, which means you are exactly one hand short for the use of a phone. So I'll see what I can do about that. It's certainly planned to go into more beekeeping videos. Another thing is, of course, that my phone microphone is kind of terrible, and it just doesn't work the way I want it to. As in, it just doesn't really give you a good audio quality, so I'll have to see what I can do about that. Anyway, I hope you still enjoyed this, and I will see you all in the next video. Till then, bye!